At that point is where it clicked in. I was like, okay, this is what a border is. It is a long, like a tall wall. And I remember thinking, I'm like, okay, there's a border, but what are we supposed to do? You could just see endless desert. And it was very clear we were going to cross the border. But I didn't understand how was that going to be possible. It was super tall. And I was a kid. It's 20 feet tall, but it's still like, it's pretty big, right?
Welcome to the podcast Camina, Conversations about Migration in Northern Arizona. I'm one of your hosts, Stephanie Voss, and I'm here today with host Susan Cooper, who's going to tell us a little bit about today's episode.
You've just listened to an excerpt from a young woman that I interviewed, who we will call Rita because she chooses to remain anonymous, and her experience of crossing the border as a child.
Thank you, Susan. I think this interview is a great example of what we're trying to do with the podcast Camina. We started it, you and I and some acquaintances, because we wanted to share the stories of our immigrant neighbors and their families and amplify their voices.
We learn about their economic and cultural contributions, their histories, and their dreams for their families and our community.
Today's episode tells a story I find hard even to imagine, and it raises the question, how does this even happen? To have a child not only cross the border, but, as I understand it, to end up being the leader of her expedition.
Well, what was wonderful about this interview is Rita really is a storyteller. And I think what you're going to find is detail and heart. And as you listen to the story, I think you'll begin to understand a little bit about why Rita's mother was compelled to make this decision.
Let's dive right into Rita's story.
I am so excited to be here with you, and I really appreciate you sharing with me your story. One of the questions that I think comes up is, why would a parent ask their child to cross the border? Then also what it's like for a child. So today we're going to give you a chance to tell that story. So you're 10 years old?
Yes.
You're in Mexico. So tell me about life in Mexico before this journey occurred.
Yes. So it was like, I knew my mom came to the United States to get money for us to build a house over there, because the house we lived in was very, very small. It was probably like smaller than a studio. It had no bathroom, so we had to go to my grandma's for a bathroom. Like, we had no windows. It was just like a square. It was my sister, my mom, and myself, and my brother lived with my grandma. My dad was not in the picture, so she decided that she wanted something better. So she came to the United States, and I remember we would schedule calls. There was no WhatsApp. You couldn't call Mexico for free. There was no messenger, so she would schedule calls with this lady that sold like chips and sodas at the corner. She had a phone booth where everybody would go over there and have their scheduled calls from people from the United States. And I remember we get a call, and it's her basically saying, hey, I'm going to call you next week, but just so you know, you're going to come see me soon. I didn't know what that meant. I honestly, I thought the United States was like another town away. I didn't know how far it was. I was still a kid, and my mind was very childish. You know, I have a 9-year-old, and I know how his mind is, and I didn't think anything of it, but I do remember that everybody, like the tone of my family was very serious. Time passed, and I remember that we had another call, and that call is when my mom told me, like, just grab a backpack and don't take any toys, just one set of clothes, and that's it. Don't even worry about anything else. And yeah, so she was like, tomorrow you're going to travel to the airport, and then you're going to come see me. She said, like, give the phone to your grandma. And then I went back to playing with my cousins. It was like a normal day. Like, I didn't process it. You know, I didn't know what that meant. The next day we wake up very early, and I do what I was told. My sister grabbed some outfit. I did the same, and we're at my grandma's, and everybody's there on my family, and they're basically saying bye to us because it was the last time that they were going to see us for a while. And I didn't know that then. I didn't know. I remember specifically like everything. It's just so impactful. You remember things like that.
Now I'm going to ask you to back up just a minute. Okay, so you weren't really sure of the location of your mother. Like you said, you were thinking maybe it was the next town. Or I know sometimes there can be the experience of feeling like you've been abandoned. Did you ever feel that way at that point when your mother was gone for that long of a period?
So I didn't, but my sister did. And the reason that I didn't is because I was always sort of like the problem child. So I was always like in trouble, and I was always with my grandma, and my sister was like with my mom all the time. So mind you, we were in the care of my grandma and my aunt. But come nighttime, we were boxed up in a box, just like me and my sister, nobody was there. Even though my grandma was probably like houses down, you thinking about 2 kids alone, right? So nighttime hits, my sister would cry herself to sleep. I would just like put her to sleep, but I didn't understand what she was going through because I wasn't like that with my mom. But now that I'm older, I understand it for sure, yeah.
Okay, so going back to that morning, you're getting ready to leave. What happened next?
Yeah, we said bye to our family, and my grandma, one of her best friends, he's a taxi driver, and he offered to take us to the airport. And we get to the airport, and I don't remember checking in because like now I've traveled on an airplane before like 4 or 5 times, and all the steps that go into getting into an airplane, I don't remember any of that. I don't remember what happened. It's such a big thing that my mind didn't register. It didn't take everything that was about to happen. But I do remember landing in Sonora, by the border of Tucson. And you remember that because it's very like where I'm from. It's a city, and Sonora is it's like a town. I don't know if you've ever been to a border town like that, but it's just, you can tell just being there, it's different. Like the air is different. Like you see a big wall, and it's just like soldiers everywhere, cops everywhere. It's just weird. There's no happy kids running around the streets like there were back in my house. I didn't see any kids, to be honest. I don't think I saw kids playing. I just saw buildings with hotels and random like trucks, cops, sirens going off nonstop. We were instructed by my mom to go to a specific hotel. And I remember getting there, and the lady told me and my grandma not to come out at nighttime because it wasn't safe for kids or the elder people. And it's a new town. We do as we're told. It's scary. It's definitely scary. And it's my sister, my cousin, my other little cousin, and my grandma. We're all girls, right? So you have 4 little girls and a old lady. Like, that's easy target. So we didn't come out. My mom was like, just rest. And in the morning, some guy's gonna come get you guys.
You've shared this story with me in the past. Didn't you have to go out and get food?
Yes, I did. We woke up so early and everything happened so fast that nighttime, we were trying to get settled in, and there wasn't enough towels. So I had to go to the reception to get towels. And then I asked the lady, where can I get food? Because we're hungry. And it was getting dark. And she said, just across the street to the left, there's a little convenience store and they sell food there. And I went by myself, mind you, like it's a new city, and I could have gotten run over, kidnapped. Something could have happened to me for sure. But I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about the fact that my sister and my cousins and my grandma were hungry, and they needed somebody to go get food. There was no DoorDash. There was no Uber back then, So I had to do that. So I remember going to the little convenience store and they had a chicken special. I will never forget the taste of that chicken because it was so it probably wasn't good chicken, to be honest, but in the time of my life that it happened, it scarred me because I ate that for 3 days, pretty much. We were stuck in that hotel room for 3 days. So it made an impact to my childhood in that sense. And once I got the food, I went back, and I remember like walking back and just feeling like some sort of like, I kind of already started thinking like, okay, this is gonna change my life. Like, I need to do something more than be a kid right now. I need to step up. Like at 10 years old, I had to get that mentality. And I remember just like, okay, I'm gonna take a step at a time. I gotta be there for my grandma, because I could tell my grandma was scared. She wasn't sure, like, of anything. All of a sudden, she has this responsibility. And to this day, I honestly don't know why they chose my grandma versus one of my other aunts, right? Or one of my uncles. I never asked. It's one of those questions like, what do you say now? It's been so many years, but I could tell she was scared. And like I said, I grew up with my grandma, so I wanted to take care of her. I wanted to make sure that she was okay. And I didn't even know anything. I didn't know what a border was, to be honest. I just saw a big wall. I didn't know anything. I was a kid. So like 24 hours prior, I was a happy kid, playing with my cousins, having fun. And then all of a sudden, I'm in this hotel just waiting for guidance, and I was like, there's nobody else here in this room that's going to be able to do that. And so I decided it was going to be me. And now that I'm an adult, like, it's always, I have that mentality. Like, I always want to do things because I don't see anybody else doing them or anybody else stepping up. And like I told you earlier, I left Mexico a kid and I came into the United States as a young woman.
So the next day, you now realize that you're going to have to take charge at certain times anyway.
Yep.
So you get up the next day. Was it a knock on the door?
Yes.
Woke you?
Yes.
Share with us a little bit about what happened.
Yeah, it was a knock early in the morning, and it was this guy, and he's like, "Are you guys ready?" We had our backpacks. We had 2 backpacks only, and we took them, and we drove very short distance. I'm talking about maybe 5 minutes of that. It was very short. Like, we could have walked there. And he's like, "We're going to the border." And at that point is where it clicked in. I was like, okay, this is what a border is. It is a long, like a tall wall. And I remember thinking, I'm like, okay, there's a border, but what are we supposed to do? You could just see endless desert. And it was very clear we were going to cross the border. But I didn't understand how was that going to be possible. It was super tall. And I was a kid. It's 20 feet tall, but it's still like, it's pretty big, right? And he pulls his truck close to the border, and he has like this makeshift ladder. It was like a very easy ladder where it kind of like had both sides so we can get down on the ladder. So once we were all there, he looked at us and he just said, "Just go north." I could ask my son right now, what's north, what's south? He probably doesn't even know what I'm talking about. And my grandma didn't even know what that was. My grandma doesn't even know how to read. Okay. So like, he kept going like this. He's like, "Just go north," pointing that way. Right. And I was like, okay, we just got to go that way. He didn't say how long. He didn't say, until you get and you see this tree, stop, make a right, nothing. He just said, go north and go north. And it was like 6 a.m. So my mind, I'm like, probably, we're going to walk an hour and we're going to be there, or who's going to meet us over there? Like, nothing. That was the only guidance we got. As soon as he told us where to go, he left. And I remember walking, and there was so many holes of like snakes. There were so many sounds. There's a lot of debris on the floor. There was baby clothes. There was like shoes, wallets, rings, jewelry. There was just so much on the floor.
You see this debris. What's going through your mind?
Obviously I was like, some people like us were here and they crossed through here. I couldn't understand why they would leave all that stuff behind, because in Mexico, like, when let's say you get, a nice pair of shoes, you value that and you treasure that because they're hard to come by, And I remember seeing this nice pair of shoes, almost brand new, and somebody left them there, and I couldn't understand. But what I put together was that probably immigration caught them and they had to just either run or ditch everything they had, in that moment. But it was just like baby blankets, diapers, it was bottles. So like I thought I was the youngest one crossing, but after I saw that, I'm like, wow, there's literally moms that cross their babies through here. And I couldn't believe it because for me, it wasn't suitable. For a baby, I can't imagine.
And you were saying the night before, the realization that you were going to have to step up to go get food. Well, now there's a whole new level of stepping up.
Oh, yeah.
Did you feel the weight of that moment
Yeah.
change and even it became more intense?
Yeah, most definitely, because my grandma, she didn't know, she doesn't know math, she doesn't know how to read. So I just told her, Grandma, we just got to go north, we just got to go this way. My sister, like, they were scared, and I was the oldest cousin. So yeah, for sure, I felt like there was nobody else that was going to lead them but me, So I took that ownership, I took that step, and I was like, you know what? It's going to be okay. I could have cried, I could have broken down, I could have done all those things, but I had to swallow my emotions. I had to not cry. Like, we kept walking, and I saw, like, when a car drives very fast on a dirt road, you see all the dust. I was the first one to see a bunch of dust just coming our way, and it was immigration. It was the Border Patrol agents, and I didn't know what a Border Patrol agent looked like. I didn't know anything, but I saw them with guns and in a uniform, and you put two and two together. It's okay. Now I get it. So the guy that crossed us, that we call him coyotes, he didn't even tell us, like, if you guys get caught, this is what you do, this is what you say. Nothing. Like, he just dumped us there and left us. And so when the Border Patrol agents stopped us, my sister, my other two cousins, they started crying. And I didn't cry. I was just trying to examine the situation, right? Because I was like, okay, this is not legal. Like, this is wrong. I was just afraid to go to jail. We get into this, like, an SUV, but it had no seats. It's like a cage, and there's no seats. And we get in there, they're still crying.
Did you have an opportunity to speak to these agents, or did you try?
They were not talking to us because we were kids. They were talking to my grandma, but it was very limited because I remembered maybe, 3 words. It wasn't like full sentences. He knew it, only basics. As we're driving to where whenever you get detained, they take you to this place to process your fingerprints. And I really believe that because we were kids and my grandma was old, they didn't process our fingerprints. They didn't take us the usual way. So I remember driving in the back of the Border Patrol car, and I remember seeing buses of people, like, they were filling them up of people that were catching on the desert, right? And I'm like, they're gonna put us there, and we're gonna get shipped back to Mexico. And no, that's what was supposed to happen. So this gentleman, he left us on the left side, and he just said, just go and don't come back. He said, don't, no más, no more. Don't come back. And I thought that was it. I was like, we tried, we did all we could, and it was very, like, it was scary. I don't remember, like, even getting back to the hotel. It was just like trauma. It was like a blur to me. And I asked my sister the other day, and she doesn't remember a lot of it because she also, like, blacked out. It was such a big traumatic experience at 10 and 9 years old, So now that I try to remember, I can't, I just remember already at the hotel and my grandma telling me to go get more chicken because we were hungry. It was a long day. We probably got back to the hotel probably like 7, 8, and I went to go get more food, and my mom called us and we told her, and she's like, okay, well, he's going to try again tomorrow. And I was like, he's going to try to do what? Nothing happened. He didn't do anything. And she's like, no, it's because that's how they do it. So I had to trust my mom. I couldn't, to this day, I don't really like argue with her on or question her, because I always thought like I thought, my mom is not going to guide me wrong. So I was like, okay, we'll try it again tomorrow. And that was pretty much it for that night.
That had to be really frustrating because like you said, this was a traumatic day for you and your sister and your cousins and your grandmother. But for whatever reason, she felt that it was important for you to try again.
Yeah, I couldn't understand it. I actually didn't sleep that night because I was just thinking, and I was going back and forth like, maybe I didn't tell her the right thing. Maybe I didn't explain to her how bad it was, how hard it was. Or I was trying to understand and trying to justify the fact that she told us to do it again, right? It was just that she really wanted us over here. She had one goal, and unfortunately, that goal meant, putting us in danger is what it was. Like, there were so many things that could have happened to us.
It was a difficult choice.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not black and white. And I think that sometimes with some individuals who are not familiar with the challenges of crossing the border and making that decision, it might seem like it would be easy. You don't put your child in danger. But obviously there were reasons why, and we're going to come around to that a little bit later.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next day 2, you're going to try it again. You're going to trust this guy.
Yes. I had a different mentality because we already knew what we were going to, like, to see, to do. And this time, we basically like go to a much farther place, and we get there, and he didn't have a ladder. He just had, it was like some steps, but they didn't go all the way and they didn't go both sides. So I remember he helped us get up there, and then with his hands, he held us so we can jump on the other side. And it worked for the kids, sure, but then you have my grandma, who is a heavier lady, and he told her to jump, tall border. You're telling an older lady to jump. It's not going to end well. And it didn't. My grandma jumped, and as soon as she jumped, we all heard a noise, like something popped on her leg, her ankle. And in fact, her ankle had, she didn't break her ankle. It was dislocated, but it was swollen immediately. Like there was color to her ankle, and I just remember looking like, this is not gonna, we're not, if yesterday we didn't get far, today we're not gonna get any closer. And as soon as he saw her on the ground in pain, he drove off. I mean, now that I think about it, it's like, okay, he couldn't have done anything. He wasn't going to risk his life and his freedom to go help this lady he's never met. So he took off. And I remember there was no shade, but there was this one little skinny tree and a tire for some reason in the desert. And I remember helping my grandma with my other cousin. I'm like, just sit here, and I basically had to flag immigration because she was in such pain. And again, my sister, my cousins were all crying. I remember just thinking, I'm like, I'm just going to tell my mom, this is it. Like, this is not okay. Like, I'd rather be in Mexico living the way that I was than to be over here risking my life. And yeah, I basically flagged down immigration.
You're walking down a road by yourself. Am I correct on that?
Yes, it's not so much a road. It's honestly, it's just desert. But I had to walk to a distance where there was nothing around me so they can see me. But I was literally like waving my hands. I don't remember I had anything on my hands. Now that I think about it, I should have. They would have seen me sooner. And it took us actually more than, I would say, 10 minutes for them to see us. And then they finally came, and I was just pointing at, my grandma. And this guy spoke a little bit more English, more Spanish. And he basically told us, like, no good, you guys need to go. He even elevated my grandma's ankle. He was very, very, like, I felt at peace with him. I felt very comfortable, and some people do give you that, I don't know about you, but like when I meet somebody and I can feel comfortable being around them, and that's the security he made us feel. Like he was even playing kid music in the car type of thing. Like he was very considerate.
So for a moment, you didn't feel like you were in danger.
Yeah.
You felt safe.
Yes, I did. So we were driving, and it was a little bit longer. And I see those buses, and and this time I'm like, okay, for sure we're gonna go to the right. We're not gonna go to the left where we're supposed to. And what he ended up doing was he actually gave me $10, enough for a taxi. He basically dropped us off on the side of the United States already. He basically, without saying anything, kind of said, here's enough for a taxi, take it to the nearest city, and you're in. But nobody told us.
You didn't know what north was.
I didn't know what north was. Yes. And so without knowing, we walked the opposite way, and we walked outside back to Mexico. And I was just more worried about my grandma because she was limping, she was in pain, she was crying, and I didn't care about even crossing anymore at that point. I was just like, I need to get her attention. But yes, we were already in the United States, and it was as easy as getting a taxi and making it pretty much with $10. Here we go back to this hotel. And then I remember calling my mom, and I told her, like, look, Mom, this is what happened to my grandma, and I understand what you're trying to do, but it's super, super difficult. We're not going to make it. And I think you should just wait a couple more months or even a year. It's not going to work out. And I already knew, just because of the 2 attempts that we had and how impossible it seemed. Okay, so let's say we didn't even get caught, right? We could have died in the desert. We didn't even take water. We didn't even take food. They didn't tell us to take anything. That guy didn't tell us. You have 4 kids. My sister was 9. My other cousin was 10. And my other cousin was 9. I'm sure there's a better way of doing this, but this is not okay. This is not going to happen. And I haven't told her, I'm like, I don't mind living with my grandma in Mexico while you work here. Like, I don't like this. This is not for me. And we got another night, another chicken meal. So my grandma called her boyfriend from Mexico, and he arrived, and he basically helped her with her leg. So we called my mom later that day, and my grandma told her like how hard it was. And my mom was like, there's another way I can get you guys over here, but I'm going to need more time because it's more expensive, like triple the money. And I didn't even know, like I didn't want to entertain it. I was like, I don't want to do this. This was scary, and this was like, is not for kids or anybody, honestly. But I didn't argue with her. I just knew that I had to listen, and I had to do what she told me. So we waited a day, and she said, a lady is going to go see you guys in the morning, and you're going to go with her, with your sister and your cousins, not your grandma. So I was like, what do you mean, not my grandma? Where's she going to go? She's going to go back to Mexico to the house. You guys are going to cross with the lady. And I'm like, no, I don't want to cross. I tried. No. She's like, in the car. And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what even crossing a border in a car was, But nonetheless, like, I told my sister, I told my cousins, and we all like rested and waited for the lady for the next morning. That's what we did.
When you told your sister and your cousins that there was going to be another trip, were they on board, or did they need some talking into? Or
so it wasn't like they were on board or not. It was just like they were so much more. They were like mentality wise, they were smaller. Like they knew what we just went through, but they didn't know that we had to keep trying. I remember me talking to my grandma about crossing the border while they were watching cartoons. Like that's how uninterested in the border they were, even though it was such a big deal. And to me, that was fine because in my mind, I was like, well, at least they're not thinking about it. They're not stressing about it. And they'd never been in a hotel before. We never even seen a tub in our lives. So they were playing in the water. They were having fun, and I was just like over here thinking like, man, we're going to cross again. Like, how's that going to be? Like, it was definitely one of those things where I was just glad they were being kids, even though I was a kid myself. And I told my grandma, I told her like, don't worry. Morning came and this lady knocks on the door and my grandma hands off. Now I believe it was our birth certificates and a backpack full of clothes. And we all had to say goodbye and all of us cried because it doesn't matter how old you are, a goodbye is always hard. It's just, it hits you, right? So I didn't cry and my grandma didn't cry until like the last hug. We couldn't hold it. And I didn't cry that much because I didn't want my sister to see me. And I just like wipe my face, but I wanted to cry so bad. I wanted to just hug her and just not let go, but I knew what I had to do. So she watched us. She's like, I'm going to stay here in this hotel. You come back here if you guys get caught again. And by then, I'm really bad at remembering things, but when I went through that, I had the everything memorized. My mom's phone number memorized, the address of the hotel, even the room number, everything memorized because I had to. So the lady picked us up and she doesn't say a word. We're driving, nothing, not even a hi, not even to make conversations like with the kid. Like I'm 37 years old now, and if I see a kid, I make conversation. Like, kids are kids. Like, hey, how are you? Nothing. She didn't say anything. It was just like we were in the car with this random lady, and right before we were about to cross the border in the line, she's like, your name is Elizabeth. And then she told my cousin another name, and my sister and my little cousin, they were both asleep. They cried themselves to sleep. And I could tell that she knew the guy because I didn't know English, obviously, but you can tell because they were smiling at each other. They were giggly. Like, he didn't ask us anything. Nothing. He didn't say anything. You can tell that she knew him. It was an arrangement, right? And yeah, so we crossed successfully into the United States at that point.
So once you finally crossed, you're in this car and you're not delivered immediately to your mom.
Correct. We were immediately after I crossed, like I do remember like, wow, this is like very clean. This is all the houses like the same color. It was immediately different. And we were actually driving to a drop-off location. This lady knocks on this huge, huge house, and this white individual walks out, and they greet each other. We all walk in. She still doesn't say anything to us. And she drops off the backpack, and she leaves. And now we're in this family's, it was your traditional, all American traditional family, right? It was a husband, a wife, a baby, and a little girl. And we're all just sitting there in the corner. We were scared. We were all dirty. We're just like, wow, like this is shocking. What is this? What are we doing here? And mind you, I had no English in my vocabulary back then. I knew basics, but like not enough to even say anything to these people. And I do remember signaling to the guy, like, phone, let me borrow the phone. And he gave me the phone, and I called my mom, and I told her we made it. And then I was like, now what? Like, I thought you were going to be here. But they ended up dropping us off in Tucson, which is 2 hours away from Phoenix. And now she's like, okay, now your uncle is working, but as soon as he gets off of work, he's gonna go pick you guys up. You just gotta wait a couple hours. Couple hours turned like it seemed forever. Like it was dark and they weren't coming. And I just remember we were watching TV. We're just like they offered us food and we were not trying to be rude. So like we didn't know what we were eating, but we didn't want to be rude, so we ate a little bit of it. And there's a knock at the door again, and it's my uncle. I never met him in my life. This was the first time I ever seen him. But I knew it was my uncle because he spoke Spanish and he introduced himself. I'm your tia's husband. Like, you guys are coming with me. And he actually still stayed with that family to talk in English. They were talking, and I was just very impatient. Like, I wanted to leave. I wanted to see my mom. And then everybody's getting up. And then he goes, I'm going to take your sister and your 2 cousins. But you can't go with me because there's not enough space in my car. And there's a lot of border patrol right now. And if they see me with more people in the car, I'm going to get pulled over and we're going to get caught. I had no time to react. I had no time to say anything. And I wanted to call my mom, but I was so embarrassed to ask for the phone again that I didn't. But I told my sister, I'm like, it's okay. You're going to go see mom and you're going to be fine. And they take off. So my mom didn't find out that I was in there until 2 hours later when he arrived without me. And she was furious from what I heard. And she tried to convince him to go pick me up. And no, he refused because he didn't want to chance it. There was a lot of border patrol back then. So that piece I understood. What I didn't understand is why I had to stay, right? But if they would have said somebody has to stay, it would have been me. Like, I wouldn't let my sister or my cousin stay. So it didn't make any difference. So I had to go to sleep in a random house with a random family. I was in shock pretty much.
Because really at that point, you had no idea when he was coming back or why you were left behind.
Yes, he said he was going to be back in a couple hours, but based on what was said earlier, like my mom said it was going to be a couple hours and it wasn't. I already knew that it wasn't a couple of hours. There was nothing for me to do than just wait. I remember the little girl. I don't remember her name, but I remember she wanted to play with me. And I've never played with dolls in my life, ever. So that was the first and last time I ever played with dolls. I can tell you that much. And she wanted to do my hair. She wanted to do give me a facial with cucumbers. I couldn't understand why she was cutting up vegetables. And, I was just, because I was not girly all my life. I've never been. And this little girl was all in pink. She was super girly. She wanted to do my nails. And it kind of detached me from everything. It distracted me. But then came nighttime, right? And she wanted me to sleep with her. And I was not comfortable with that because I was in a new house, So I didn't know how to tell her that. So we ended up going to the living room and they had a big beanbag. And I remember just laying there in that beanbag and I put myself into a little bowl and cuddle with myself and fell asleep. I felt comfort in my own, just hugging myself. It was very interesting. And I just fell asleep. I didn't cry myself to sleep or anything like that. I was just shocked.
You probably were pretty exhausted.
I was mentally, yes. Yeah. Because, I was also worried about the fact that, has anybody told my grandma we made it? She has heart problems. She's probably being worrying about us. My mind didn't stop thinking. And yeah, I went to sleep. And when I woke up, they asked me if I wanted breakfast. And I wasn't hungry, but I ate because I didn't want to be rude, One thing we always had is manners. And I was just like, yeah, I think I had a waffle for the first time in my life. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to eat it, so I just grabbed it and bit it. They were putting butter and syrup, and here I was just buying it. And now when I first realized, I was like, I still remember because I was like, wow, she probably thought I was like, look at this weirdo. I don't know, but I never seen a waffle in my life, And we were about to start playing when there was a knock at the door, and it was my uncle. And they exchanged words, and I told the little girl, bye. And I get in the car, and I swear to you, there was enough room for like 10 grown-ups. Like, I swear to you, there was so much room in that car. I didn't understand even more why he had to leave me. So, again, I didn't ask any questions. It's a new person. I wasn't going to be like, why'd you leave me, So we ended up driving 2 hours. But this time, my tia, who I've never met in my life, I've never seen her. She was raised in New Jersey. So I heard about her. I heard she lived in the United States, but I never met her. So that was the first time I ever saw her. And it wasn't even exciting. Like, when I saw her, I wasn't excited because I was literally in trauma stage at that point. I couldn't process everything.
So was this in the car?
Yes.
So she came down with your uncle?
Yes. I saw her in the car once we were already about to start driving, and I knew it was her, but like, I've only seen her pictures, She hugged me. She was all happy, excited. She's like, your mom's going to be so happy. And I was just like, I didn't know. I was just not happy. I was just, I didn't have no emotion. It was draining, But she asked me if I was hungry. And because I had such a light breakfast, I didn't get hungry till like we got into Phoenix. And I remember my first McDonald's meal. It was a cheeseburger with pickles, and I've never had pickles. And I'm not rude, right? So I just ate it. But I remember thinking like, wow, like, American burgers taste so nasty. But my taste buds, weren't introduced to that kind of food. So like, now I love pickles. What was I thinking, But I remember the Phoenix tunnel that you have to go through to go to the Phoenix airport. Every day I drive there to go to work. And every day is like, I see myself as the first time I ever crossed that tunnel, in the back seat of that car, like being little and not knowing what the future had for me. Like, I saw buildings. It was clean. It was just so much better. But I didn't know where I was going still. I just felt like this crossing the border, getting to a house. I was like, am I going to go to another house? Like, what's going to happen? I didn't know when it was going to end.
So you get to the house. I take it, now this was your mother's house at this point, or your aunt and uncle's?
It was my aunt and uncle's, but my mom was there with my sisters and my sister and my cousins, and they were all like dressed with brand new shoes, like clothes that didn't have holes in them. It was like they were very clean, and they adapted I couldn't believe it. To me, they looked like they lived there their whole lives, and they just arrived there like the day before. They were so comfortable being there, and we had other cousins too, but like they all spoke English. But kids have a universal language. Like, kids can talk to kids, and they were just all talking. And I was just like, I had just arrived. I was dirty. My hair was messy. I was like nauseous. I was just like trying to process it, and everybody's so happy. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I couldn't grasp the moment there.
Tell me about the moment
you
saw your mom.
Again, I wasn't very close to my mom, even to this day. Obviously, she's my mom, and I love her dearly, but I have a much more emotional relationship with my grandma than I did with my mom. And that's because my mom in Mexico, she worked two jobs. So she would go to work early in the morning, and she would leave 10 pesos for us to buy tacos. and then go to sleep. So we wouldn't see my mom because she had to work, because she had to, right?
So the real caregiver in your family
was my
your
grandma.
grandmother.
Yeah. But when I did see her, she started crying. I remember she was crying and she hugged me and she did apologize. She said that she had to do that. She had to put us in that situation. But if she had known it was going to be like that, she wouldn't have, because she didn't know that so basically the coyote guy told her that for kids and older people, it's different. But when I told her exactly how it was, she was like, that's how I cross. I'm a grown woman, you know. I cross with grown men. And she did apologize, and I don't hold anything against her. I never did. And now that I'm a mom, I don't know if I would have put my kids through that situation, but I did go back to Mexico recently in June after 26 years. And I can tell you that if I would have stayed in Mexico, my life would have been a lot different. Like my brother, he lives over there and he has a full-time job. He barely makes $100 a month, right? His house is very poorly made, and he's tried his hardest. Like even with schooling in Mexico, if you're not a doctor, if you're not a police person or in political field, you're basically not gonna do well. So when I went back, I remember I didn't see my house because I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to remember that part, you know. But I saw my grandma's house, and I remember thinking the only thing that has really changed is the landscape, because everything is pretty much the same. We live very poor in Mexico. I am thankful for her for that. I will never forget where I came from, but I'm just thankful that my kids will not have to go through that.
So you kind of answered the two questions that I posed at the beginning of our chat, and that was, how does a parent come to that decision? And granted, you can't speak for your mother, but you've seen enough where obviously it wasn't an easy decision for her, but life, like you said, in Mexico was just a lot. And you were starting to tell me too, even within 1 year of being here, you had a birthday party and you realized just how your life had changed.
Yes. So I'm celebrating my birthday, and I'm surrounded by a bunch of kids I've never even met. They were my neighbors. We lived in an apartment. And I remember hearing happy birthday for the first time in my life. I thought they were going to sing Las Mañanitas, but no, it was a happy birthday, and it was a Winnie the Pooh cake, because I loved Winnie the Pooh back then. And I just remember, I even have a picture. I got to look for it, where I'm looking at my cake and I'm crossing my arms and I'm sideways, looking at my cake. And I'm pretty sure I'm thinking to myself, this is, my previous birthdays were not like this. I had my family around. Now I have a bunch of kids that I can't even communicate with. And, and they're singing happy birthday to me. And, it was definitely different for me. But I definitely believe that I left Mexico being a kid. And when I came here, I was a mature little girl.
So living here now in the United States, what does it mean to you?
No, I'm super blessed. You would have to walk a mile in my shoes to understand it fully. But it is such the way of life, the quality of life here in the United States, it is so much better. You go from school. Once you're done with school, there's no colleges that really support you the way they support you here. We don't have financial aid over there. So if you don't have money, you don't go nowhere, right? And like I said earlier, it's hard to make money. I'm grateful, and I'm super, super thankful that I am here in this place that I'm in, because if I was in Mexico, I would have grown up knowing Mexico. But now that I grew up, in being here in the United States, it's hard to think how my life would have been over there. But from when I went to go visit, I can tell you it's super, super hard. Like to see like my family, they live comfortable because that's the life they know. But if I could, I would do so much better for them.
So, your vision for your children?
Man, I want to give them everything I didn't have and more. I want to put them through college. I want to push education on them. My mom didn't push education on us because all she knew was work. She's like, as soon as you're 17, 16, you're going to work. You know, you need to start helping with the bills. And that was it, you know. And in high school, I actually tried to apply for college and I was denied because I didn't have a social security number, right? So then shortly after that, they were enlisting for the army. And I wanted to go to the army. I wanted to be a soldier. I was actually born on a military base in Mexico. And I thought that would be cool, you know. Let's continue that. And this military guy was like immediately shut me down. He was very like ugly about it and basically told me you can't because you're an immigrant. You know, you can't fight for the United States, what he said. And so I can't go to college. I can't go to the army. Okay, I'm gonna go work. So my first job was at a state fair. And I was running a hot dog stand, I believe. And I just worked since then. But like I told my wife, it's like, I want to give the kids everything we didn't have and more. But I also want to teach them where we came from. So right now I'm in the process of, she petitioned for me because we're legally married now. Hopefully I get my permanent residency here soon and I'm able to take them back. I can tell them, my oldest asks me all the time, tell me about when you were a kid, what did you play with? You know, did you have tablets? You know, I can tell him a million times, but you have to be there to understand it and to experience it.
So, one last question. What would you say is probably the biggest misunderstanding about immigrants, and how can people help make immigrants feel more comfortable?
People tend to stereotype immigrants, and I'm sure you heard this before, where they say, you came here to take our jobs. Jobs are there, but the only people that truly want to work and work hard for less money than, you know, what we're entitled, like we're supposed to get paid, is immigrants, because we know how hard it is in our country. I have my cousin came to work in harvesting lettuces in Florida. He was on an assignment from Mexico. They took him to Florida, and he worked very hard. He worked like blisters on his fingers, and he didn't care because he was making $9 an hour, 12 hours a day. They took him to a hotel, and there was like 13 people in one room. It's rough, but nobody wants to do that kind of work. Who wants to do that kind of work? Immigrants, you know, because even at $9 an hour, that's way better than what he would get making over there, right? So going back to your question is, I think we have a stereotype that we're stealing jobs. But then again, if you take a look around, you don't see Mexican people or immigrants asking for money. You see us at Home Depot asking for work. You know, you see us with beat up trucks doing landscaping. We're trying to make a living. And I think for sure a lot of people don't see it that way. But definitely we have a stereotype.
So, in closing, is there anything you would want people to know about your story and what it's like to cross as a child?
I had it hard, and it could have definitely been a lot worse. I could have died in the desert. It could have been summer, and I was a child. But I think even if I was a grown woman, chances of me dying, I think for sure everything happens for a reason. And I was meant to get caught twice, so I didn't cross the desert. I honestly don't know, but I've seen documentaries, I see how ugly it is. Like, think of it like if you go hiking and you just go into into a mountain and you just keep going. The guy just told me to go north. I don't regret going through this because it made me the person that I am today. I just wish everything was different, a little bit different in the sense that my grandma would have been here with us. But then, of course, she has her daughters in Mexico. She's happy over there, but I would have loved for her to have seen how beautiful it is here at least once. But other than that, I mean, experience is definitely like I will never forget this ever in my life.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Appreciate it.
So, Stephanie, what did you think of Rita's story?
That was really moving, Susan. There are some pictures that I don't think I'm going to be able to get out of my head, starting with the grandmother falling right near the beginning of the trip and Rita having to rise to the occasion. Wow.
I know the same for me as I was listening to her tell the story. And again, like you, there were images I'll never forget. Her sitting on the little beanbag and just curling up and cuddling herself at the end of this journey.
Yeah.
But as far as answering the questions, I mean, I think we definitely have a story about what it's like. But you also had another question.
I was curious about how anybody could let a 10-year-old cross the border like that, much less unsupervised, and with so little preparation. I mean, they didn't even tell her to bring food or water.
And I appreciate what you're saying, and I think many listeners may share your views. And I don't know if we'll ever really totally understand what it would be like to have to make that decision, mainly because, from what I understand, one of the major factors that contributes to these kinds of decisions has to do with poverty.
I was struck by Rita's description of the house she grew up in Mexico, with a tiny room, no bathroom, and not even enough room for her brother to live with them.
Right. And if we start to look at our two facts and an act, which we always enjoy sharing, I think it provides another layer of helping us understand why her mother may have made this decision. Primarily, she's not alone. So for our first fact, according to Congress.gov, since 2021, the apprehensions at the U.S. ports of entry at the southwest borders have exceeded 130,000 each year of children who are unaccompanied. Now, that's the individuals who actually go through the port of entries. Unlike Rita's situation, we don't really know how many children are actually passing without going through the port of entry.
It's overwhelming to realize that so many of the people we hear about who cross the border are children who didn't even make that decision themselves. They do it because their families feel such a sense of urgency about getting out of where they are.
Right. And I think, again, from the perspective of trying to understand the decision, I don't think you or I will ever understand it because we don't understand that kind of poverty. And that brings us to our second fact, which is that there are 3 countries that are home to 59% of the people living in poverty in the Latin American countries. And that's why we see so many people from Mexico as well as Brazil and Venezuela coming across. And their definition of poverty, according to the World Bank, is living on less than $3.65 a day. So without having had that experience, I don't know if we'll ever really understand why a parent would make that kind of decision.
Well, one thing we do know is that Rita has had a better life being here in the United States and in Arizona. I don't think she would send her son on the same journey, but on the other hand, she doesn't have to. I think I understand this a little better now, and I hope, listeners, that you feel the same. And now it's time for our act of this episode, which is pretty simple. It's just a reminder. People like Rita, who came here as children, are eligible for the DACA program, And Susan was just telling me that there are some big delays in the paperwork for that program. So if you or someone you know is a DACA recipient, make sure you get your paperwork in 4 to 5 months ahead of schedule to make sure it's handled in time.
Thanks, Stephanie. And for today, thank you for our listeners for joining us at Camina. And you can visit us at our website at www.podcastcamina.com. At our site, you can listen to the current and past episodes. And under Keep the Conversation Going, share your thoughts and comments about the current and past episodes. Please request being added to the email list so we can send you a reminder as each new episode is aired. We appreciate your participation and your curiosity.
A place where contradictions meet. Deserts of sand, mountains of snow. To make it our home, there's a long way to go.